This story of mine comes from perhaps the worst period of my entire life so far. I grew up privileged. Summers in the Hamptons and winters in the Bahamas kind of privileged. My dad was an investment banker, and a good one at that. So much so that Mom never had to work after they got married. I had it all. Fancy private schooling led into what I thought would be a free college education. Well, not exactly free since Dad was footing the bill, but I'd never be saddled with any kind of crippling student debt that would turn my peers into wage slaves for the rest of their lives. At least, that's what I thought was going to happen, until the 2008 financial crash. A lot of other financial companies got government bailouts right out of the taxpayer's pocket, but my dad's didn't. For whatever reason, they didn't qualify, so he lost his job. Long story short, one day I was in college, living the good life. The next I was on the phone to my mom, being told I'd have to drop out and find a job if I ever wanted to be able to support myself, as they just didn't have the spare cash anymore. It was devastating. I'd never worked a day in my life before, and there I was, traipsing around town with a folder full of resumes, trying to find something, anything, to get some cash in my account. And that's how I ended up working at Burger King. It was really hard at first. Although I didn't necessarily feel like it, I obviously gave off some major rich girl vibes, as the rough, tough, working-class staff members detected it immediately. They didn't go easy on me, not in the slightest. But if I'm honest, that's the best thing that could have happened to me. In the space of about 3 months, I learned the meaning of a hard day's work, and the more I threw myself into the challenge of full-time work, the more my colleagues started to respect and appreciate me. In the end, we were incredibly tight, and I still keep in touch with a few of them via Facebook and stuff, but anyway, now that you have a bit of background, on with the story. So I was working the late shift one night, which is generally the hardest shift of the day. The manager only ever put the most competent, most capable workers on that shift, and I know it sounds dumb, but the fact that I'd proven myself enough to be put on that cycle was a huge compliment to me. We used to stay open until midnight on weekends, and at about 11:30, we get this pretty regular-looking dude coming in, standing there at the counter whilst perusing the menu behind me. I gave it my best. "May I take your order, sir?" He looks down at me. Without skipping a beat, he's like, "2 double cheeseburgers, please." I could have plugged the order into the register when he interrupts me with an addendum into his order. "Could I have those without the bun, the bacon, or any cheese, and hold off on grilling them for me, would you? Thanks." I stopped plugging his order in and looked up at him. "Excuse me?" It took a moment for me to really process what he was asking for, and he smiled as he began to clarify what his order was. "Is there a problem?" Yeah. I'm not sure we're allowed to serve raw hamburgers. It's against food safety regulations." "You've heard of steak tartare, haven't you?" Yet another guy who immediately detected something in my mannerisms or accent that suggested I was upper class. I didn't even justify it with a response. I just asked him to wait a second while I talked to my supervisor. So the supervisor comes out and basically tells the guy no, just like I had. Even if you can eat raw beef, it's just not something we're able to serve our customers, or that's what I thought anyway. Because as my super is talking to this guy, calmly explaining that as much as he's sorry, it's just not something we can do, the guy rolls his eyes and pulls out a wad of high-denomination bills from his pocket and is just like, "How much would it take?" Now the place is pretty much empty at this point, but all eyes are on this guy and his wad of bills. I'll never forget the moment my supervisor stopped talking all calm and professional before turning to me and telling me, "Go to the back and clean something." I was stunned. I knew the guy well enough to know exactly what he was doing. He was going to clear the floor of potential witnesses, then actually get this guy's order. I pretended to clean something, all the while spying on him as he collected 2 raw patties from the fridge and sort of went through the motions of cooking them, so that if anyone watched the cameras back, it would look like he had done his job to the letter. A couple of minutes later, he comes into the back, telling me to take over the register, but not before he slides a few crisp $100 bills into my hand, telling me not to say a word to anyone and to just forget about what had happened before people start running their mouths about it. As far as the rest of the team knew, he had told the guy no, served him some regular burgers, then simply gone about the rest of his shift as normal. But I couldn't let it go. I had to get some closure, even if I had a few $100 worth of tips. I had to know what this guy's deal was. So being the sly fox that I am, I ducked my supervisor and hit up the manager in his office, asking him if, since it's so quiet, it'd be okay if I took a cigarette break. He looks at me all confused, turning in his chair before saying, "You don't smoke, do you?" Yeah, I just started. Stresses of the job." "Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but you're entitled to your 5 minutes. Just make sure you get your station covered." So I did. I got a buddy of mine to man the register, bummed the smoke off of one of the fire guys, then stood out back trying to get a look at the guy as he headed for his car. So there's me, standing there, pretending to smoke while I pretend I'm not watching this dude climbing into his driver's side. Then the thought hits me. It's late. Stores might not be open. In fact, they definitely weren't open, and the dude probably wanted something to cook with, right? Wrong. I distinctly see him unwrap the dripping wet burger wrapper before he raised the raw meat to his face. He doesn't take a bite, not like I expected him to. In fact, it looks more like he's smelling the meat more than anything else. I really couldn't believe what I was seeing. Literally, though, I thought the perspective had me seeing something that I wasn't, so I made the awful decision to edge a little closer to the car, angling out so I could see through the driver's side window, all without considering that his side mirror would reveal me as the peeper that I was. And oh my God, the way he looked at me through that window, this wild look in his eyes after breaking from what looked so much like he was making out with that chunk of meat. He was furious, gunning his engine before ripping out of the parking lot as fast as he could move. I just tossed the cigarette, ran back inside, and went straight to the super to tell him what I'd seen. He only repeated that no matter what, I wasn't to tell a soul that we'd served him raw meat, or those few $100 bills would be the last money we ever got out of this place if the owner didn't opt to sue us too. We never saw that guy ever again, and no one ever found out about the raw meat we sold him. I don't suppose I was in any real danger, but it was definitely the scariest, if not the most disturbing incident I've ever had while working at Burger King.